Hello and happy Friday, ladies and gentlemen. Welcome to this week's episode of Breakfast with Boom. I'm your host, Mr. BoomStick XL. Ladies and gentlemen, we have an outstanding, I want to say it's going to be about 80 minutes. I don't want to go more than 90 because I got some things to do in the afternoon before I pick up Mrs. Boom. But we're going to give you a good show. And obviously, by the thumbnail and by the title, we're going to be talking about Shawn Layden. Now, listen, you guys and gals have heard me talk about Shawn in positive ways because honestly, he's probably one of my more favorite PlayStation bosses and personalities over the years. I loved how he would come out and be energetic and high five and slap, say hello to the fans and take pictures. That's who he was. Unfortunately for Shawn, he has once again put his foot in his mouth, and I would even say that I would even say that he's put both feet in the mouth, and that's very hard to do because I don't know how he's standing. I'll say that. But he did an interview the other day with GI.biz talking about the games industry, and of course, while talking about the games industry, he targeted in on Xbox, as he's done more times than not. He talked about the consoles going away, which again, I have some a tremendous amount of pushback on that. I think that it's for someone in his position, for someone with his knowledge, what he is talking about is absolute rubbish. It seems reckless. It seems very pointed. I don't understand. I understand he bleeds blue. I mean, that he's a PlayStation guy. Nothing wrong with that. There is something that you can do as a professional, and that is embarrass yourself. And I honestly believe that he ultimately embarrassed himself because his opinions are his opinions, but they're so wacky and they're so off the cusp. When you have all of this information readily available to you, I find it to be reckless at best. But if we have time, folks, on the back end of the show, we're going to be talking about Black Ops 7 because there's a bunch of new information about the powers that the specialists are going to have. Wall running apparently is going to be back. There's going to be a bunch of things that's going to make this much different than Black Ops 6, and that's because this is ultimately a sequel for Black Ops 2, and it's going to take place also after Black Ops 6. We have some information on that I want to get into because obviously, look, as excited as I am to get back to Halo, I love Call of Duty. I try to play at least every day, try and get my dailies, get them in, get my points. I want to say maybe 10 matches away from hitting 100 of Prestige Master. I've never done that before. That's like a really big deal for me because I played Call of Duty and I used to play religiously during the 360 era, but I am really like in it. Like I am really in the weeds at this thing, and I'm enjoying it. I'm having a lot of fun with it. But Crispy Bomb, good morning, kind sir. You are I don't want to say wound tight, but you're definitely going to have a lot to say on Shawn Layden's ridiculousness. How you feeling, brother? Good morning.
Richmond, don't tell me how to spend my money. Don't do it. I think you're gonna get a dark boom. You're gonna get a crispy rant at some point. I'm gonna be very pointed, but this man, as Travis Kelce would say, know your role and shut your mouth. And that's the way I look at it, because at the end of the day, you're working for Tencent. They're back end buying like half of the gaming world right now. They buy stocks in all these different companies, and I'm going to be honest, like I hear him as a mute point, but this is ridiculous because he's actually contradicting himself, but we're going to get into it.
Yeah, I have a lot of notes. I have receipts, as the kids like to call them, for Shawn Layden, who predicted consoles going away in 2019. PS, by the way, what does he know, right? But Fuzzy Belvedere, good morning, kind sir. We got to get into this because again, Shawn Layden had so much to say that he came at it from three different points of view, and that's exactly how we're going to attack today's conversation. We're going to talk about the strategic partnership that was signed by AMD and Xbox. He seems to think that is going to fall through, which I think is ridiculous. He also talked about $80 games being a thing He talked about budgeting of games. He also talked about Xbox Game Pass. He said subscription services, but he mentions by name Xbox Game Pass, as he's done more times than not. I have thoughts, theories, and really pointed views on every one of those points. But good morning, brother. How you feeling?
Well, I'm feeling great. Glad to be here with you guys. I'm definitely going to have some words to say about it as well. But don't mind the noise in the background. Finally getting the podcast room kind of wrapped up. Flooring's in today. So this is going to be an interesting one because like Crispy said, rich people shouldn't tell the regular folks how to spend their money. If anything, it's not like they're going to listen to us on how to spend their money. So this is going to be a good one.
Indeed it is. You know what? Let me throw up the first super chat of the day, and I'm going to throw it up on the screen. This is something I'm going to try and do more often is, kind of give credit where credit is due, because people don't have to give us anything, and they do. And the first super chat of the day comes away of J Mac in the chat. He's a good friend of the channel, has been for years. This is a phenomenal point. And it's a great jumping off point, if you will. Instead of being an ambassador for the good of gaming, he continues to fuel console rhetoric, shameful for his position and sad. Indeed, J Mac, and thank you so much for the generosity, brother. Look, I have a couple of stories pulled here. Again, I'm going to read the stories. I want to tell you where they're from, and then we're going to attack this. It's going to be an open-ended conversation because everyone on this panel here is a paraprofessional podcaster. So however they want to take this conversation, it is going to be pointed. It is going to be regarding the articles that I do have pulled. It's going to be open-ended, and I really want to get the chat involved in this because, again, I think J-Mac brings up a phenomenal point. I think someone of his leadership stature, I understand he's no longer a boss for Sony Interactive Entertainment, more specifically PlayStation. I get that. But he's still an ambassador of gaming. And every time Shawn Layden opens his mouth, he puts his foot in it. And he's fueling the console war rhetoric. And I understand that, it for him, maybe it's blue versus green, right? And for a lot of people in this chat, blue versus green, it matters. Console war talk and conversation matters. It still does. I think the console war is over. You heard me say this yesterday. Not only do I believe it's over, I believe Xbox won. Xbox won because of what I said yesterday, and I'll reiterate it for the class that wasn't here, that took the day off. They won because right now, 6 of the top selling games in Sony's top 10 are Xbox games. That's how you win the console war. You can't beat them, join them. And they did join PlayStation. And now PlayStation gamers, not the trolls, not the stands, not the effing a-holes, the actual PlayStation gamers, which are in this chat right now, which we love hanging out with and having great conversations with, those gamers are enjoying Xbox games. Why? Because they don't have an Xbox. Maybe they don't have access to a redonkulous type of PC. But what they do have, and what they've been supporting maybe since the PS4, is PlayStation. And some of these gamers were Xbox 360 gamers and that were moved over because of price. And now they stayed a PlayStation gamer. So now they're winning. That's how you win the console war. And Xbox is putting their games everywhere. And not only are they putting their games everywhere, but you can play their games anywhere, which is, again, winning the console war, right? But, again, I don't want to go down. That's a conversation we're going to continue to have. We got to get into what Shawn Layden had to say, and here's one of them. This is an article that I pulled from GameSpot.com. Now, I normally don't pull their articles because some of their journalists are ridiculous. But it's an important part of today's conversation because it's one of the key points I want to kind of point out. The title of the article says, Xbox at a SEGA-like fork in the road and may stop making consoles, ex-PlayStation boss says. And it has a quote here from Shawn Layden. I don't think their hardware offering is persuasive enough to make that up the ground that they have lost. And he goes on to say, now, the original article or the interview was with GI.biz. Now, the reason why I'm not using them specifically is because it is written like the Wall Street Journal. and it's a good read. It's a phenomenal read. I am going to, for the sake of talking about their article, going to add it to the show notes. So if you want to click on it and read it, by all means, please do. But it will be in the show notes. And part of this article is referring to what he said in this interview. It says, speaking to GI.biz, Layden said, there will certainly be more console generations to come, but Microsoft may not be a part of that story. In quotes, watching what Xbox has been doing recently, I do get Dreamcast flashbacks, referring to how Sega got out of the console business after the Dreamcast failed and they became a software company. And he goes on to say, and again, this is Shawn Layden, I quote, I think Sega realized that they were just better off being a software house. I think Microsoft is in that same sort of fork in the road. And I don't think that their hardware offering is persuasive enough to make up the ground that they've lost. Now, folks, look, I don't have a business degree. I do have in front of me in a very nice plaque a degree in common sense. Right? And I'm very proud of it. I worked real hard to get it. It's right here. Right? You can't see it because it's in front of me. It's fine. The problem with this statement and why I consider it to be almost unbelievably reckless is it was announced last month that AMD and Xbox have signed a strategic partnership that's going to go into a decade worth of partnership, right? That's a lock and solid contract. They have already announced hardware that is going to come in the form factor of their own Microsoft branded hardware, which is expected in 2027 in two forms, just like this current generation, an S and an X, but not in name, just in the way that they're going to have two SKUs. There is going to be a very powerful magic box underneath your TV that's going to be open source. It's going to be the first of its kind for home consoles by platform maker, right? There's also rumored to be a handheld, a dockable handheld that's going to be very Switch-like. Now, those are rumors, folks, but we have heard it time and time again. You've heard me talk about it. But next year is going to be the first time in Xbox history. And if you add PlayStation and Nintendo, it's going to be the first time in platform history, not counting the 3DO with Panasonic and what they did, but in just the three bigs, an OEM device that is going to be Xbox branded, but made by someone else other than Microsoft, probably Asus. Simply, I say that with just, again, it's common sense, folks. They've already worked with them on the handheld that's coming out later this year. That's going to be unveiled in a big way at Gamescom next week. But this new OEM device is going to be the first of its kind for the big three, right? So Xbox is going to get a jump on it. Is that hardware? Well, shit, I think it is. And so he's already wrong. But that's not the only story, ladies and gentlemen. This one is the one that gets me. Look, I said this in the green room, ladies and gentlemen. I am a retired man who worked a very violent job. And thankfully, I came out unscathed and I never hurt anybody in my 21 plus years. And it makes me really proud that that's the police officer that I was, right? As I am now is exactly how I was in uniform. Very, very Ferdinand the Bull. Now, if you don't know who Ferdinand the Bull is, it's one of my favorite childhood books. Ferdinand was a bull from Spain that all he wanted to do was smell his flowers under his shady tree. Until one day, a bee stung him in the ass and he became enraged and the town became afraid of him because they wanted him to bullfight. And he didn't want to fight. That's like me. I don't want to fight with anybody. And I don't want to fight with the industry. But I am going to tell you that, again, my whole long-winded point is that I don't get mad at stuff that happens in the industry. Because one, I can't control it, and B, it's not that serious. Though there is one particular point that pisses me off more. This is where Dark Boom, this is where the horns come out. And this is pointed at just more than Shawn Layden. Not that he has anything to do with this conversation, but I look at like Mike Ybarra. He says things that are idiotic. And my whole point is, Crispy, Fuzzy, you said it. How dare these millionaires tell us that games should be more, or that services like Xbox Game Pass shouldn't exist because somehow they're hurting the big picture of profits for gaming. Now, I don't curse, and I'm not going to, but F you guys. And I'm not talking about the chat. I'm talking about Shawn Layden, the Mike Ybarras, and the types like them. These are millionaires with a lot of zeros in their bank accounts. How effing dare they try to tell me that I, as the consumer, should not be celebrating Game Pass, that it shouldn't exist because profits are down for companies and development costs are up? That's not my effing problem. That's your effing problem. But you know what's interesting? The big point of that, prices should go up and Game Pass shouldn't exist, and companies are not making as much profits as it's a thin line of profit to spending. Oh well, figure it out. The big problem with when they talk in riddles like that, because that's ultimately what it is they don't mention, Crispy Bomb, the big elephant in the room, and that's free-to-play games. Free-to-play games are eating the industry's lunch. It's not because of Game Pass that Spider-Man 2 was $315 million to make. Was it? No. Was it because of Game Pass that Donkey Kong was $70 and Mario Kart was $80? Is that Game Pass's fault? It is certainly not. The industry has to make up their money somehow, and they decided that they should raise prices in games. And they raise prices in games for two reasons. One, they have to combat higher budgets, right? That's the world we're living in. But also, they have to account for someone buying a console and not buying their software because they bought the console for Fortnite, for Apex Legends, for Warzone, for Roblox, or Minecraft. Those are the top 5 bigs, but no one ever mentions that. Crispy, I want to go to you this because, again, Shawn Layden had a lot of things to say. There is no right or wrong way to start and end this conversation, but I want to get your thoughts on this.
Dreamcast came out in America in 1999.
Yes.
How many gosh darn years is that? Think about it. It's about 26 years, people. Why is he bringing that up? Microsoft is not the same company as SEGA. Microsoft is a $1 trillion company, multi-trillion dollar company. They make software, okay, that can go to these devices that we're talking about, these OEM devices. If it's Asus, Lenovo, the way it's looking, maybe Apple's going to come out with something that is gaming related that can run Game Pass. We don't know. If you got TVs that can run, I don't have to even use my Xbox Series X. And I'm going to be honest with you. They never, re-announced that the cloud is working, but I'm going to tell you right now, even if I boot up my Series X, I have games in there that are cloud-based that work pretty darn good. I'm going to be honest with you. They are quietly doing back-end things like they always have done. It just so happens that they're trying to integrate their breadwinner at the end of the day, and that's Windows. And that's where I say, like, they look at it in a landscape, like almost like a PC-like landscape. Like I have a Surface sitting in front of me, and they're still making Surfaces, people. They still make them. They take their time with it. They have all these other companies that are making stuff for them. This is the world we're going to live in at some point. It's not saying that Xbox ecosystem is going to disappear. If anything, it could be reinvigorated into a new ecosystem that involves other storefronts, just like a PC itself. And it's not that hard to think about. We are so far away from his reference points that it's absolutely ridiculous to even have that comparison. Okay, Sega is doing great. We're not taking that away from them. What I'm saying is they had a choice at that time of what to do. We are talking 26 years later about Sega Dreamcast. Come on, Shawn. You got to get your head out of your you-know-what and understand that the world has changed in 26 years, buddy. Not only that, that man, he works for Tencent. Now, if you look at how they purchase things, they do it very shadily. They will put, a 30%, they'll take 30% from Sony. They'll take, 20% from Embracer. I'm sure there's some kind of like investment in that too. Okay. They do things very, shadily, as I like to call it. And this is where I say, okay, you're calling Game Pass to the forefront. What has Game Pass really done? It hasn't hurt nobody. Okay. Consumer wise, oh, I love it. Like I had somebody put out a tweet and say, oh, you Xbox gamers don't have a library. Oh, really? Really now? I probably have more games than you, buddy. And that's because when I want my games, I get them. Okay. I get them, I love Gears. Will I play a campaign in Halo? Absolutely. Do I dabble in a Forza? Absolutely. Am I gonna just download Outer Worlds 2 into Game Pass? And I can do that, but that doesn't mean I don't buy games. That doesn't mean that I don't add that, because when you add that extra little tier that they give you in, the $20-$30 in Game Pass, you own the game now. People don't realize that. You own the game, okay? And it's never going to leave anyway, and they only do it really with Xbox games. But in realism, like, hey, like, I'm preview in Grounded 1, okay? I bought the preview in Grounded 1. Guess what? I own the game. It's in my library, all right? Preservation of library is the only concern I have as far as what Xbox does. But this man is out here acting like smaller devs can't make something great, and then it can, have its way. Just 6 months, it goes into the ecosystems of all, like a Ninja Gaiden 4. I truly believe that's going to sell really well as well across all platforms. But it's in Game Pass. You know what I mean? Like, and I don't think the game happens without Microsoft's backing.
And that's been confirmed. Like both games, Ninja Gaiden 2 Black would not exist, as well as Ninja Gaiden 4, if it wasn't for Microsoft and Xbox putting their foot forward. That's confirmed, dude.
If you look at the landscape, it's much different. And we're going to get into other comments. But, like Netflix, like everybody says, oh, they're one of the richest companies in the world, but yet they make no profit. They've been making profit for a couple of years now, people. I'm just telling you, they've been very pointed in what they're doing. And this is where, like, the artist part of it drives me crazy. These artists, there's a lot of big names in some of these shows or movies or anything else. Literally, like, just watching some of the old school wrestling stuff from Netflix has gotten me back into wrestling. You know what I mean? Like, and I'm talking years upon years, like, Attitude Era when I was at. These are things that are happening, and I think they're having more medium and more ability to say, hey, like, you know what? We didn't sell what we could, but if we release it in Game Pass, take that bag, whatever it may be, maybe it's a percentage. Phil always says they're very agnostic with how they, if that company wants a percentage, if that company, just wants, a full-on payout, whatever it may be, they do. If they feel the game is worthy, they do that. Okay, is that a bad thing? I don't think so, because it could be a dev with 2 people, you know what I mean, or 1 person, you know what I mean. They've done this. Okay, like PUBG was like a huge experiment to them. Like, I remember playing PUBG, paying the $40 in preview, and enjoying it for like a whole year and a half. Like, I wouldn't go always, I wasn't religious about it, but I would enjoy it. And it was trash. And what it is now is incredible, and that's where they're putting out, hey, like, we're done with like the Xbox One stuff. We're gonna up res everything. We're gonna make everything look even better and play even better. These are the things we look for as gamers. And I think at the end of the day, if Game Pass does that for you, or the ability to say, like the free-to-play model's there, but for Microsoft, a lot of us look at Game Pass as a quote-unquote free-to-play model in a way, because we say, oh, we get all these games, and then, oh, Helldivers 2? Yeah, why not? I'll just, yeah. I mean, I haven't really bought a game in my head, just like any subscription service like Netflix or something else. I haven't really bought a game in a while, or I just purchased the upgrade to said game. Like, Avowed, purchased the upgrade. You know what I mean? Like, these are things that we're allowed to do, because guess what? A lot of the revenue that these games make, at least the big games, it's all microtransactions. Okay? And you'll look at the free-to-play model, and that's how they make their money. Why is Fortnite still around? I wonder, Shawn. Why
you don't
is
have
it
to
still
invest
around?
$1, dude. If you want to just the idea of pressing start on one of these games and just playing into your heart's content is how they get you, right? And I name them. And again, I only named 5. There are a lot more than out there. But the top 5 is, obviously you got your Minecrafts, you have your Roblox. Those are the 2 big ones. You got Warzone, which I know it's fallen off some, but it is still a big free-to-play game. And, of course, you have Fortnite and Apex Legends. These are what people are flocking to. This is what the industry has turned into. And what, to your amazing point, Crispy, he says all of these things about pricing of games and subscription services, and that hardware is going away when we know that it's not. And out of everything he had to say, it's all a moot point, because he doesn't mention the reason these things are happening. More specifically, like, if you look at how Microsoft has reset themselves, OGs like us would have never guessed, if you would have given us 10 guesses 5 years ago, that Gears, Forza, and Halo will be on PlayStation. We would have called you a lunatic. You've heard me say this before, right? But they had to course correct, and because of the money they're making there, it makes up for the hardware they're not selling, which allows them to invest in hardware, right, for the future. So it's a cost and effect kind of situation.
So here's the worst part of this is Shawn is so disconnected at this point from Sony that he doesn't see what they just did. They did a round table, just like the 4-game thing when we had to deal with it. They did the same thing. Okay, like the couches looked more comfortable. That's about it. Okay, the little, maybe they reclined at the end and they could just sit back and say, "Oh, I'm gonna sip my tea. I'm gonna get more stock." Because I'm telling you, like Sony's up around their 52-week high point for stocks right now. They continue to like hover around that already. So you look at that and you say, okay, he's just disconnected. He doesn't know what's going on, because Sony's clearly slowly, very slowly adopting what they're going to do. But at the end of the day, like, you look at what Microsoft's done, like the big ones are Forza and Gears. And we're talking about a 5-year-old game, and we're talking, well, actually maybe 6 now, and we're talking about a 20-year-old game. Okay. And you look at that and you say, can you make money off of your old games over on Xbox? Sure could.
Yeah.
And I think that's the way they're looking at it. And
they're going to do it.
You know, you really look at the landscape, it's changing. And him himself said, AAA games are hard to budget for now. Didn't he say that?
He did.
He said it's somewhere around that aspect. You know, I'm probably being nicer about it than I should. But all of a sudden you're going back on the, maybe it's because you work for Tencent, sir.
Maybe buying up the industry. PS, by the way,
I don't know, man. I don't like somebody that talks out of both sides of their mouth. Don't be a hypocrite, and that's where I'll leave it.
Well, it's a great point. I you know, the hypocrite part of the conversation is there. Again, I don't normally get. The horns don't normally come out for me, Fuzzy Belvedere, for people's opinions, because, you know, there are their opinions and they're entitled to them. I just think that someone that has been a part of the industry for as long as Shawn Layden has, he's held some pretty prominent jobs within Sony. Well, I mean, I don't know whether he's still there or he's not. I couldn't confirm. He held or is currently holding a prominent job with Tencent. When I see people of his stature come out and make these bombastic opinions, it almost seems like he's fishing to be hired, right? So I don't know whether or not he's still there or he's not. But what I will say is that it's reckless. And I don't think he believes his own bullshit. I really don't. And why I do get aggravated and why I get frustrated with people who are supposed to know better is because he is a person and he's earned it. He ran a business, and a very successful one, for PlayStation for many, many years. So no one is suggesting that he hasn't earned the $1 million status, but we know that he has it. And what pisses me off, and I said this before and I will reiterate it again for the class, is when someone has that many zeros in his bank account and you start to tell and give your ridiculous opinion about $80 games, the profit margins being very close to investment for these billion-dollar corporations. Well, who gives a shit, right? And then you're going to come out and you're going to say subscription services hurting the business. Never do you ever hear him come out and say subscription services good for the consumer because right now everything else is tough. Let's get your thoughts, man.
Where to begin? I'll start off by saying this. Anybody that's been in a C-suite position knows that the market changes from time to time. Every 5 to 10 years, your landscape of customer base can be completely different. So if you don't adjust with the times, you get left behind. Comparing Microsoft and Xbox to SEGA at the time, I think it's a bit early to even mention those things. One, the backing of the company is a bit different as far as their financial access. And Microsoft is one of those companies that if things aren't mathing, they're going to quickly cut those ties or sell it off or close up shop kind of thing. But as long as it's making money, they're going to continue to do things. Even when it's not making the intended money, but it's still somewhat profitable, i.e. the Surface laptops, they'll continue to make those because it is that halo product to some extent for your lineup to act as a gateway for your customer base. Sure, there's the OEMs out there that they can make a ton of money off of with software and such, but having your own device is kind of that Apple-like presence, which not every company can pull off with every type of device. But all of that aside, the key things that he seems to have failed to recognize of why his exit with PlayStation probably came sooner rather than later, is not only the managing of budgets for these dev teams and the costs that have skyrocketed for these AAA games, although some studios out there are better at managing their finances or keeping the scope within a reasonable amount. Whether you look at AA level teams like the ones that made Expedition 33, or what Obsidian's able to do, where they're able to reiterate with smaller teams making these smaller experiences in a faster turnaround time and staying within budget and not having things like feature creep really extend that cost, and also working within their own IP as opposed to necessarily licenses, especially when you're working with a licensed partner that's beating you over the head to influence you to give up the rights to Spider-Man. But that's a whole other story. The other key thing he ignores is that the $80 games is not the answer, because $70 games has definitely affected in a negative fashion this industry. Now, sure, things are more profitable than they've ever been, but it's not because of the $70 games. They are making more per game that they move, but they're moving less games. And it's not in the proportion that they had hoped, where if you just raise it $10, maybe you lose less than 10% of your sales. No, they've lost more like 40% of their sales with that $10 increase. If you look at when games were 60 versus now. So games sell a lot slower in comparison to the previous generation where they were $10 less. So if you're experiencing that, as well as a younger generation that are come accustomed to these free-to-play games where they just spend money on season passes and skins, that leaves the industry with a hole. And things like Game Pass are the workaround where you're actually getting more customers to experience these AAA games that they would have normally never looked at, because they're all about those free-to-play games. So if you give them a service where they can experience these games, and on occasion they'll pick up a game here and there, but because things are going up in price as far as not just the games, but groceries, rent, mortgage, whatever, people have to adjust accordingly. And that seems to be the thing he fails to understand, where you could raise prices to 80. Sure, you could get rid of subscription services. Well, then where does that leave the market? Do we have another crash like we did in the 80s at that point? Because if you already know the metrics, which you can follow Matt Piscatella as far as him telling you and going over the Circana info and data, more people or less people are buying games. More people are going with subscriptions. More people are spending money on microtransactions within the free-to-play games, because ultimately it feels like you're spending less money for the enjoyment time that you're participating in these black hole games like Fortnite, which is its own platform per se. So he's missing the mark on going with the more expensive games. I don't think that's the answer. I think having smaller games that are within a certain scope and stick to that budget would be the answer. That's kind of why he got thrown out on his ear. You can't go to the higher ups at Sony and say, yeah, we need another $350 million to make a Spider-Man 2.5 or Spider-Man 3. And the only way that we can recoup that cost is to break it up into 3 games, which, yeah, that goes along the lines of making a smaller experience. But if the entire game was a normal experience and you're breaking that up, it is going to feel like you're cheating the customer, hitting them over the head with, even if it's a lower price game at that point, with a $50 price tag, because they're going to ask for at least $50 at that point. It's not like it's going to drop down to 20 or 30 breaking it up, but it feels like he's either lost touch or didn't realize he was pretty much the demise of his own doing kind of thing. But when you look at subscription services in general, if it was that real unsustainable, I think they're beyond the acquisition aspect of when you're trying to accumulate as many subscribers as possible. I think they're satisfied with the amount that they have. Sure, they could, I'm pretty sure they would be over the moon with even more subscribers, but this is Microsoft. The same ones that got rid of Mixer, the same ones that got rid of the Zoom, the same ones that get rid of a ton of other programs or initiatives or parts of the company. Like, they could have been the better competition for Apple and the iPhone compared to Google with Android had they stuck with it. But no, they spent all that money on Nokia and decided, you know what? That was couch cushion money. Just close it down. So do you really think Xbox is going the way of the Dreamcast at that point, when they have so many other things that they've for less of a reason that they've closed. I would think at this point, Xbox is viewed as a more of a staple at this point. Now, I could see them moving more into a streaming service, kind of like a GeForce Now, because the next piece of hardware, along with them selling the console, that chipset's going to be in the cloud.
Yes.
That chipset will be more of a rival for a GeForce Now type of experience where the latency is lower, the visual fidelity is higher. That is probably where most of the industry is going to go, because I don't know if he's aware, $3,500 for a 5090 is a bit ridiculous. Sure, some of us can afford it handily, but a majority of us can't. And I know he has a lot of zeros at the end of his bank account, and that's fine. 3,500 is like a nickel to him in that regard. But for the majority of the masses that are going to be the customer base, that's not the case. And with that being said, at some point we're going to reach a point of not really no return, but we're going to reach a crux where the cost of this hobby is going to open up more people's eyes to the subscriptions that he's so against, or open up people's eyes more so to the free-to-play games that nobody really wants to talk about or dive into how that's negatively affecting the industry. Like, you don't have to spend a dime on a game, and you can have hundreds of hours in several of these free-to-play games. Sure, you may not have all the cool skins that you want, but you're still participating in gaming and taking up a lot of your free time. And that's basically what this hobby is: enjoying gaming in your free time. If you don't have to spend a dime to do it, well, how does the industry make money? And that's kind of where we need to come up with a better response or a better alternative to these free-to-play games. Something that's going to be just as appealing, but not break the bank, or not, be so much of a reach with it being an $80 price tag. I'm not saying we should have $20 games and just stick to Metrovanias and things like that, but I would say there should be more teams looking at smaller budgeted games, smaller experiences, or just look at subscription services, getting more people in the door that way. And then having it where if it's not a first party, it rotates out. So that way you sell it at a discount. It's kind of like the answer that Amazon has with streaming media. A lot of those movies you can actually buy. They're the closest, thing to like a Game Pass thing in the streaming service realm. When you look at Netflix, you're sure you can buy some of those series, but you're going to have to go to Best Buy or go to, the actual, studio that produced it to buy the disc set, if they even sell Blu-rays or anything like that. So I won't say he's completely out of touch, because obviously he's still, earning his keep over at Tencent, but it is a different industry than when he was holding the chair over at PlayStation. Things have changed. The consumer base has changed. Their spending habits have changed. And it's not just because of Game Pass. It's more so the free-to-play games that everybody is afraid to, talk about, because they might actually, expose their biases against, Game Pass in some extent. But I've rambled enough on it. But I think he just needs to be more in touch with the real causes or downfalls, I guess you could say, in gaming, where that is more of a blight than any subscription service could ever be. That's just my 2 cents.
And it's a great 2 cents. Now, what I want to do is I want to catch up with Super Chats, but when we're done with that, I want to take the next segment and focus in on the hardware. I don't think we had an opportunity to cover it. We all mentioned it, but I want to go into more depth, because there was a tweet from Derek Strickland, who runs Tweaktown. And when you get him to agree about Xbox, you said something stupid. And I'm talking about what Shawn Layden had to say about the Dreamcast effect. He's getting this gut feeling. They're going down the Dreamcast, right? I want to get into that, because I have a couple of articles pulled that come at it from different points of view, and they bring up Sarah Bond and what she said, and we're gonna then, of course, I'll get there, but let me catch up on Super Chats, and we'll work it out. Oscar Wheat in the chat drops a very generous $5 Super Chat. Oscar goes on to say, that Shawn Layden dude got on my nerves. If he wants his job back with Sony, he should just say that. That's a good point. I mean, thank you, Oscar, as always, for the generosity, brother. We super appreciate it. We also have 2 super chats come in from Do You, K Now, the Broke Boy Insider. He drops a very generous $2 super chat, and I'm going to be watching this. Now, again, I've never played World of Warcraft. It's the PC thing, right? I've never seen it, but Will brings up a great point. And we're going to be watching this one because the developers of World of Warcraft at Blizzard keep saying that y'all not ready. That is a running conversation that's happening. Will goes on to say, new Warcraft expansion teaser opens with the Xbox logo. It's pretty interesting. Is World of Warcraft coming? Xbox? Well, we will know soon enough because apparently there's going to be a big blowout at Gamescom next week. We also have another $2 super chat. So, Will, thank you so much for the additional generosity. He goes on to say, Game Sir, who made the Wu Chang controller, is finally up for pre-order. I just pre-ordered it thanks to Will. Thank you so much. You got me to buy another controller. Damn it. That's just my life. We also have a gifted sub here from our generous friend all the way from Hawaii, as he's done almost every show. So, Nino Vistic, thank you so much for the generous donation, as you always do. Aloha to you and the fam. Hopefully you're having a beautiful day in Hawaii. Thank you so much for the gifted sub. We also have another gifted sub. Comes the way of GameSeek or Game Seeker. Thank you so much, Game Seeker. We super appreciate the generosity. Once again, thank you for gifting 1 Double Barrel Gaming membership. So, of course, if you did get that, please thank these gentlemen for dropping it in there. But look, gentlemen, this is one of those interesting conversations regarding hardware. If there's one thing that we can all admit, and the numbers are out there, folks, is every quarter that Xbox has to put out their numbers to investors, they have been down in console sales. They've slowed down production of Xbox Series X and S consoles. I think it's a mistake, especially when the industry, as we know, is moving away from the PS4, the PS4 Pro, and both versions of the old Xbox One, both the Xbox One and the newer models. We see that happen with NCAA. We're seeing it. It's going to happen with GTA 6. It's happened with quite a few of the EA games, and it's going to be a trend that's going to be moving forward. More third-party developers are not going to develop games for the old generation of consoles. And again, we're coming in on the 5th year of the current gen. It's probably about time, right? But Shawn Layden, and again, we mentioned this in the beginning, but I really want to spend a few minutes kind of going into the actual hardware quote. And I want to reread the article from GameSpot.com. It was written on August 14th, which is yesterday. It was written by Eddie Makuch. So, of course, I forgot to mention that in the beginning. I will have this article in the show notes. So if you want to click on it, by all means, please do. So you can read it for yourself. And the quote of the day for me personally was comparing the current Xbox to what happened with the Dreamcast. And Crispy Bomb brought up a phenomenal point. You're comparing what happened in early 2000, because it released in 1999. It's probably not only one of my favorite releases of all time, but they had the best launch lineup in gaming history. I bought every game. It was astounding how many games were available at launch, and they were all killer experiences. And unfortunately, in the early 2000s, I think it was 2001 when it officially just died off, it went away. Sega left the hardware business. We were all saddened. Bad decisions. The Dreamcast was way ahead of its time. It really was. And Crispy's point about taking what happened in 2000, let's just say, for instance, for shits and giggles, 2001, right? Well, we're in 2025. That's 24 years ago, right? It's how do you compare what's happening with Xbox, who is winning on all accounts except for hardware? Now, their move away from hardware, or at least traditional hardware, is because of the industry as a whole, right? They understand, if Phil has said it publicly, that they lost the worst generation to lose, and that was the start of the digital libraries. So how do they pivot, ladies and gentlemen? Well, they pivot where they allow for you as the gamer to choose. Instead of you coming to Xbox to play a game, Xbox is bringing their wares to you. Does that matter? Does platform matter anymore? It does not. Now, we haven't seen the full shift to Nintendo Switch 2. That is apparently happening at some point. But right now, it's PC, PlayStation 5, and Xbox. Right? So if you want to play a specific game, you can play it on your console of choice that it's been released on. And we saw that Microsoft is basically shifting everything over at one point or another. You can play on your console of choice. You can play on your PC. You can play on your handheld of choice, and there's a lot of them. You can play on your TV, right? Grab a controller, pop it on, link it, play, go. You can play it on your tablet. You can play it on your phone using your backbone. Hell, you don't even need the backbone if you don't want. You can literally just play on your phone. So the way that Xbox is attacking the hardware failure for the company is they have shifted in ways where you don't need their hardware. Now, is that a detriment? That's up for debate, right? That would be a 5-hour podcast, and we don't know if we'd even get to the answer. But what came to be a part of this conversation was his suggestion that Xbox is going to completely just get out of the hardware business. And again, based on what we read, he says that they're at a fork in the road of where Dreamcast was. I think he's 1,000% wrong, Crispy Bomb. I think that we've already had Sarah Bond last year talk about the new hardware coming for the next generation is going to be the most powerful hardware they've ever had. We know that they're going to have their own handheld. And again, it's rumored to be a dockable handheld. I want to get your thoughts on this ridiculous theory that Xbox is somewhere even remotely close to where Sega Dreamcast was, and why he's wrong, because the heads of the company have said that they have a hardware coming out. How does he challenge that? He's been out of the business for many, many years. I think he's wrong. I want to get your thoughts.
Bringing up Sega brings me to a place that just they botched it. They destroyed their own brand. And we're talking we'll go 24 years, as Boom said. Dreamcast died when Saturn botched. They botched it. Okay, bad. And the only reason why I can say this, because I was a Blockbuster kid. And I had a Blockbuster down the road. And I watched PlayStation grow into a whole entire aisle and half of the aisle. And this little smidgen was the Saturn. Okay? And then I go and say, man, what is Saturn doing wrong? That, what do I got to play? Virtua Fighter? Do I play, some game that was kind of, irrelevant at the time? All these things. Probably one of the best, and I will say this on Saturn's defense, one of the best games I ever played was Black Hawk Down. It was better than PlayStation. But you look at all those games that are next to the Saturn little section, and you say, yeah, dude, there's too much. Why don't I have a PlayStation? You know what I mean? And I guess that's the old school part that I look at. And I say, why are you bringing up something that, it's nostalgic to me, but at the same time, Sega chose what they chose. Even, I mean, I've watched Peter Morris say, like, I didn't do what I should have done at that time. Okay.
They raced
like,
to the industry to try and get ahead of PlayStation, and their rushing is what doomed them.
So we look at the landscape right now. There's a constant battle still, which is hilarious because I have a Series X, and I'm gonna tell you right now, every game that I have on the Series X, and maybe I really hope there's some PlayStation gamers, not stands. Go look up what stand means right now because it's in the Urban Dictionary right now, and it's basically a fanboy that can't has to ignore things that are actually happening. And if you look at it, you say, how is Microsoft different? How is Xbox? We're in the Microsoft realm. I'll be honest with you. Like the OEM console thing, that's going to happen. Okay. But the one thing I'll tell you is they don't mind taking some of that share themselves and releasing their own console. And this is where the Windows thing that, I mean, they basically told us, like, they're going Windows, okay? If they pull it off for next year, because next year is like a huge year. It's huge, okay? As far as Xbox in general, it is absolutely astronomical, okay? The entire brand identity between Gears, Halo, just the console coming out, everything else, it's hitting milestones that most people said they were dead, 3 years ago? So I don't know. I feel like they're going to come out with something that's reasonably priced, but they're going to allow partners that, are in bed with AMD as well, say, maybe we could put out something that's a little more crazy. And the one thing that people forget, and I guess I'm just like one of those memory people, the entire Microsoft ecosystem has always wanted a box in your living room. They always have. They've always wanted. PlayStation challenged them, and that's why they got into the console business to begin with. People forget these things. But in realism, go look back to anything that Xboxes or Microsoft has put out about the console business. They want a PC in your living room. Okay. And I'll tell you right now, if you give me a decently powered, able to play Steam games, because this is where like Shawn Layden's like off the hinges, like doesn't understand how many thousands of games come to Steam all the time because these smaller developers are allowed to do it. Isn't that interesting? $10. Hey, they'll take it. They don't care. And if you like that game, they're going to support you. They're going to talk to you probably because they just want you to be engaged. These are the things that happen that maybe someone like myself don't see. Luckily, I have a young kid that, just he does what he wants on PC, and I see it, and he enjoys everything he plays, and like it community based, like all these. He'll have one screen with Discord, the other screen, and he'll be listening to the Discord chat or whatever else. It's a different time, people, and This man is not worthy of speaking of this time. Now, maybe I'm not either, but I will tell you this. I don't ignore enjoyment. I don't ignore what people feel. And what people feel right now is that Xbox is going into a different stratosphere. They're saying enough's enough. We can do what we want. We just need to create the ecosystem within Xbox across all these different devices. If they do that, Sony's screwed. And I will be with King David when that happens. But until then, I will say this. Sony has a out. They can release games on Xbox and have people gravitate towards them. And then if they want to sell a console again, which it don't sound like it, by the way, if they do, they have the ability, but they don't have the money that Microsoft has. And the only thing I'll give them is like, even when the Outer Worlds 2 thing came out, and everybody was, we were all against it. You know, the $80 thing, we were all against it. Okay. And at the end of the day, they dropped it. So how long are they going to drop it? We don't know. I mean, you got shareholders in the back end, but when you're that big of a company, you shouldn't care, honestly. I mean, Sony and Microsoft are not even on the same level. They're not. Okay. But we still get Game Pass, which I'm still surprised because, you know, like Mixer, I loved Mixer. I love being able to do what I did. Even the Windows Phone, I had a friend that had it, and it was pretty amazing because I was used to Windows. Okay. These are things that they've destroyed, absolutely like obliterated in stupidity, in my opinion, you know, but it was reactionary because a lot of these things happened after 2013, and 2013 hurt Microsoft. Okay. And as Phil said, people built their digital libraries during that period of time, and they didn't know what would come after. And unfortunately, Microsoft, they botched it. That's okay. Take the L. But guess what? Microsoft's like, you could play it on your phone. See, here's the thing that people ignore. Why are they making so much money? Are people just downloading Game Pass onto their phone or onto their TV and not buying the console? Is that a possibility? Oh, I think it is. And I've seen it. And I say, wait for it, because when it happens, when you have an OEM that's like $1,200 but has all the graphical fidelity, and if you want to go buy it, go right ahead. Or you get a Series S like console that's reasonably priced at $400 at that point in time when we get to these new released consoles. I feel people are going to have a different shift and be like, man, like I can, you know, I got the money. I'll spend that, you know, have that beautiful console under my TV. Because I'm telling you right now, Series X, I adopted when it came out, people. It still runs great. It hasn't hurt me. You know what I mean? Sure, there's the hiccups with the internet and everything else. We see it all the time with every company. But in realism, it just works. It just works, man. Like, I don't know what to tell you. Like, when you guys are down, we're down for a couple hours. People are crying at the, you know, and you guys are down for a freaking week, 2 weeks. And I'm sitting there and I'm like, I just worried about putting my credit card information on the PlayStation. Like, what are we talking about here?
No, you know what, dude? You're not wrong. And you know, you made a great point. And I want to segue that point to Fuzzy, because again, I don't want to go too long on today's show, because I got a bunch of things to do on the back end. But Crispy, you specifically made mention of Xbox doing something different and giving people choice. I think that what you're talking about is this new OEM device that's going to come out. It's probably going to be expensive, right? And what we all believe is going to happen is subsidization is not going to be a thing for places like Asus. Now, could Sony do it still? Sure. I don't believe they are going to do it. I think their console, whatever it's going to be, the PS6, whatever you want to call it, is going to be $600, $700, $800, $900. Same thing with the same thing could be said about Xbox, but Xbox might be in a position where they can come out with something and subsidize it. Now, do I believe it's going to be as much as they subsidized the Series X and S? I don't think so. And someone like Hargeet believes that is going away altogether. I don't necessarily know. But what Xbox is doing differently, Fuzzy Belvedere, is it's going to be an open source box. So it is not going to be a closed ecosystem box like the PlayStation 6 is expected to be. The PlayStation 6 is going to be a very powerful console. There is no arguing that. But it's going to be just a PlayStation 5 with a new number and more power. It is going to play Sony's games, and that is it outside the third party. It is not going to play something from Steam or Good Old Games or Epic Game Store. And that changes the game. And you know what? I want to bring up specifically the conversation between GameSpot and Derek Strickland. So Derek Strickland, again, he's the owner of Tweaktown. He responded to the GameSpot posting of the article, and where the article said Xbox at a Sega-like fork in the road and may stop making consoles, ex-PlayStation boss Shawn Layden says. Okay, Shawn's entitled to his opinion, but Shawn is wrong. He's wrong for 1,000 reasons. Well, Derek Strickland's response, both responses are pretty pointed. The first one says, Sega didn't make billions of dollars from live service games, subscriptions, and digital content that can and has subsidized console manufacturing. He's 1,000% right. But his other point, his follow-up point, is even better. He says, I also have to reiterate this point. Xbox console users are the most embedded / entrenched gamers on Microsoft's games platform. Any hardware deviation will need to be handled over time, in parentheses, years, to migrate the disastrous losses that would occur from such a thing. So obviously, he's suggesting that if they just stopped making consoles, it would be disastrous. And you know what? Here's where my common sense degree comes into play, ladies and gentlemen. Is Xbox Game Pass available on PlayStation as of today or Nintendo Switch 2? The answer is, of course, no. And it's unlikely it would ever be there. So if Xbox were to stop making consoles, what would they do with the potential 35 million subscribers? And if you really want to get to the brass tacks of it, let's just say for shits and giggles that you knock off 10 million are on PC. That still leaves you with 25 million customers. So what are you going to say? Stay with the old hardware and you're good while we're getting our lunch handed to us by everyone else that's got new hardware? That doesn't make any sense whatsoever. And to make matters even more damning for his stupidity, and that's right, I called Shawn Layden stupid because his opinions are just that. You had Sarah Bond, who is the president of Xbox, come out and tell you to your face that not only are they going to have the most powerful hardware that the company's ever put out, but there's going to be multiple pieces of hardware. And I'm not talking about in 2024. I'm talking about as soon as the June showcase where she talked about future hardware. So she is, again, these are people in prominent positions that not only have to answer to the Satya Nadellas of the company and the Amy Hoods of the company, but they have to answer to the publicly traded people that are investing billions of dollars of their money into this company, and they would be literally lying and held liable for doing so. Again, I think Shawn was a great PlayStation representative. I think he's someone either looking for work or trying to stay relevant by being idiotic publicly, because that's ultimately what this is based on what I've already said. And I can go deeper, pause. But Fuzzy, I'm going to get your thoughts on this, man. Hardware going away versus the difference of what Xbox is doing as opposed to the standard Nintendo Switch 2 and the potential PlayStation 6.
Okay, so there's a lot more to the hardware aspect when it comes to Xbox in general. Like, I think the thing that people overlook, I mean, sure, there's somewhere around 35 million Series X and S consoles. But there's still a lot, just like on PlayStation, there's still a lot of previous generation console users that are in the ecosystem. Now, the key difference between people on Xbox One versus people on PS4, the people on PS4 are stuck with only games that are cross-gen. So anything that's still being made for the PS4, which every day we find more and more of the newer games are leaving the last generation behind, they're kind of stuck on that end. But on Xbox's side, there is that alternative with having Game Pass Ultimate, that you're able to still use your Xbox One to play current gen games on that older hardware through streaming. And that's something that PlayStation doesn't offer. So while there may be 30 to 35 million series consoles out there, there's still probably another 30 to 35 million plus of the Xbox One customers that are still buying games, that are more than likely still subscribed through Game Pass to be able to have that option to stream the newer style games without having to buy the newer hardware. But Xbox is going to still make that hardware. It's just that they're going to continue allowing you to have the older hardware. So if you're not quite ready to make that leap from the series console to the hybrid PC console next gen, you'll more than likely still be able to play some of those games through Game Pass Ultimate or whatever other tier that they may create to have Steam as an included outlook type of thing. So they're going to stay in the hardware business for a good bit of time. Like the reporter was saying, they would have to transition a lot of those users over to whatever that next platform is that's going to be their foot in the door to get them to still spend money in the store or spend money as far as with the subscription. So I don't foresee them leaving the hardware business next generation or the generation after that. But then again, we can't really see that far in the future. Like I honestly believe by, I would say, the end of this next generation coming up, a lot of people won't be on console. And I've said it before. I predict at some point your console will be no more than what the controller is. It'll have all the innards of what a console, what you would need for a console that's as powerful as they are today. They'll be able to fit in that controller, and you'll be able to play your games through your TV that way. But that's me just kind of predicting something in the future. Who knew that we would have the type of consoles that we have, let's say 10 years ago, or that we'd be able to have cloud streaming stuff, 10 years ago, like with GeForce Now level type streaming, fidelity and so forth. So I don't see them leaving the hardware business, primarily because that's one, their biggest foot in the door. Two, when Phil talks about like the Xbox customers, and it's funny that people always say Xbox customers don't buy games. They're making a ton of money off of the Xbox consumers in the ecosystem by either buying software, which Microsoft being the software company that they are, I would have to believe that some of that is true within what Phil was saying, that more than likely if you're subscribed to Game Pass, you're buying the season passes or you're buying the DLC because you figure you're saving the money and not buying the $70 or $80 game. You're spending it in other ways. Plus, you're more likely to buy the games that are not in the service or that will likely not come to the service while still being subscribed to the service. So you have access to hundreds, roughly close to 1,000 games, especially when you look at the Play Anywhere aspects of things within the service, and then the games that usually don't go in the service that you would wind up buying outright type of deal. So I think they're going to continue making hardware, even if that future is just the console being this controller. that's what they'll more than likely do for, I would say, the next 10, 15, 20 years plus, just because that's the easiest way to get their consumer hooked into the ecosystem, staying subscribed, buying more content, buying more add-ons or accessories, or microtransactions and such. Because it's better when you make 100% of the money within your store, especially on your first party stuff, or the 30% on third party stuff. If you're not making the hardware, then you're at the mercy of whoever else's hardware that person is on. Now, they are making the 70% on any of their PlayStation customers when they put the games over there, or the 70% that they'll make off of Switch customers when they put games over there as well. But in the grand scheme of things, you always want that 100%, especially if you're going to be the size publisher that they are these days. They're one of the biggest, if not the biggest publisher when it comes to being in the gaming industry. So they're going to want to continue to have that bigger cut within their own house. And they're always going to want to have that house for that reason. But I don't know why they keep on thinking that, changing hardware or getting rid of hardware. Sure, they'll be fine selling software, but that getting that 100% within their own, storefront is going to be what's going to make the big difference for them. That's easier money that they can quantify, easier money that they can rely on with the subscription, the recurring revenue and stuff from that. I don't know why it's so hard for Shawn Layden to visualize that. Like, he was all about the PlayStation Store doing something similar where their first party in their store is making 100% of that money. Why would he think that Xbox would be any different?
It's a good point of view. And of course, folks, if you're wondering why there was banging, it's because Fuzzy here has some housework that's going on, and he told us.
Fuzzy, I freaking love you, dude. Like, you are such a dude. Like, you've been doing this as long as me.
He's just going.
It's like, yeah, I'm just going, baby. Like, dude, I love it, man. You are just amazing, dude. And you brought up a great point. Like, at the end of the day, like, why not have, we'll say for third party, like, okay, you get a good percentage, but at the end of the day, like, involving different gaming ecosystems into said system is not bad. And I think, realistically, Xbox, they have so much first party. I mean, Matt Booty said there's still 40 games out there. Like,
40 games in development.
I really don't think Microsoft wants to take away percentages from what they could make. And also, I think the ecosystem for Xbox, it has much changed in these past, like, I'd say 3 years more than anything. And I really fully believe that they're going to go, like, full on multi-plat in a way, like, and I'm not talking like PlayStation, Nintendo. I'm talking just, with the Epic and Apple thing and all these other things. Like, realistically, think about it. Like, they've been backing Epic for a while now. Like, people forget this. Like, they've been backing them for a while, and Epic's been destroying even Google people. Like, they are not messing around, and I think that's on purpose. And I actually respect them for it, saying, hey, you already have that lawsuit in there or whatever else, the litigation, whatever you want to call it. It's there, and they've won, people. They've won, and I think the landscape is going to change even more in the next, like, year and a half.
Dude, it's rapidly changing. And it's interesting. Shawn Layden works for a company that has the most free-to-play games at any one place. like how crazy is that? Like, he literally is a part of the problem, and he has the audacity to talk about ballooning budgets. Like, bro, are you serious? Like, did you not get up and cash the check? Or did you not get the direct deposit in from Tencent, who was paying you based on the profits that they're making from the, 20 free-to-play games that they currently have on the market? Like, are you serious? Like that's why it gets annoying, because he knows better. You literally are working for the company that is part of the problem for the industry, free to play games. And then you're like, well, I don't know why, we charge more game. Shut up. Just ridiculous. He and again, this is why it's frustrating, because he knows this. I don't have to say it out loud. He knows who he works for crying out loud. But listen, gentlemen, we're going to get everyone out of here. It is almost 11:30. I wanted to do like a 90-minute show, and that we got two major pieces of a conversation that I think were really well versed from everybody on the panel. I do want to catch up on super chats. We got one here from, I'm bringing it up on the screen. Sotnist in the chat drops a very generous $5 super chat. He goes on to say, Shawn Layden is signaling to investors of Tencent, paid Sony games are unsustainable. Game Pass bad for business. Our free-to-play black hole slop in the future. And I literally just mentioned that. That is a phenomenal point, and it's the honest truth. Like that is ultimately what is happening. But let me bring up the other super chats, and we'll get going. Generous friend of the program, King Web in the chat, who I talk to pretty much every day, is on DMs. He drops, ladies and gentlemen, a very generous $5 super chat. King Web goes on to say, I always tell people that play on PlayStation, don't look at Xbox, look at Microsoft. They're the ones making the moves in the background. And again, maybe before ABK that wasn't the case, but when Papa Microsoft gives you $80 billion to spend and you spend that money, they want ROI immediately. And that's why they're doing what they're doing. We also have here 5 gifted subs from our generous brother, Joe Dunmore. Joe, great to see you here, brother.
Joe Dunmore.
Thank you so much for the incredible generosity. Folks, if you did get one of the gifted, and there's been quite a few gifted subs on today's show, please thank either Joe Dunmore or Nino Vestek, or of course, Game Seeker in the chat for the generosity. We also have here an additional $2 super chat from King Web, because Epic versus Google will help Game Pass in the hundreds of millions. You know what? Yeah, it will. That's. I mean, they backed the right horse. No pun intended. I will say that. But ladies and gentlemen, again, hopefully you enjoyed the conversation enough to do a couple of things. One, if you're not already subscribed, it'd be pretty dope if you can subscribe and help us build our wares to 17K. We're still a considerable amount of subs away from it, but we have surpassed the 16.1 thousand subscribers. That's, again, it's for a small channel, it's a really big deal. By end of year, we should, at least based on the numbers that Google provides to me, we should have surpassed 8 million views in 8 years, because we make 8 years doing live content as of November 3rd, 2025. And that's, again, we've worked hard to get where we are. We appreciate all the subs. We appreciate all the shares. And we want to continue to grow the channel. And of course, you can help us do that by simply subscribing. Before you get on out of here, if you enjoyed the conversation, and I think it was very fair, it was pointed, but again, we bring the notes, folks. We bring the documentation, the evidence-based conversation for everything we talk about. And if you enjoyed it, please hit the like button. If you're feeling super generous because it's Friday and your weekend is a few hours away from ending work wherever you are, you can share this on the socials and help Mrs. Boom and I get other people to watch it. I am going to be putting up 2 videos immediately after this show is done regarding Helldivers 2 and what big news is happening for Halo. I already did the thumbnails. I already put the videos together. They'll be dropping after this show. And then, of course, more than likely tomorrow in my spare time, I'll cut this down into 2 videos so it's more digestible. If you missed it live, you can check out the video. And again, folks, you're going to hear some banging because there's no way to get that out unless I do some sort of a magic trick with the sound. But, you know, this is live. We're not in a studio, and I'm not paying anybody to be here. So people are donating their time, and we're all in our living room. So this is what happens, ladies and gentlemen. But again, please look out for the videos that are going to be dropping and share them on the socials. But again, we're all caught up to date. A big thank you to all of the super chats, all of the donated memberships. Mrs. Boom and I do greatly appreciate it. Let's get everyone out of here. Chris Baum, let's sell the brand, brother. Where could people follow you on social media? Where might you show up next? And if they want the Crispy Truth receipts, where can they follow you on other social media forms?
At Chris Baum on X, Chris Baum 28 Xbox Live. Find me wherever I show up on Boom's channel. That's the way I roll. One man, and I'll tell you right now, us three are like a juggernaut, baby. Like, you know, let's break through walls. Let's get people going. You know, Fuzzy, bro, like you killed it. You did exactly what I would do in that situation. You just kept talking, brother. And I love it. I love it so much. And I think at the end of the day, like, let's start being gamers again. Let's, you know, like, I think we're gonna, you know, like Shawn Layden, like, I think most people would agree he was pretty stupid in this. I mean, the points he brought up were pretty dumbed down and been there, done that type thing. And I mean, if I was an executive, I would have fired him already. Like, even at 10 cent, I'd be like, no, you're done. At the end of the day, like, could 10 cent want to make their own subscription service? We have them all. I mean, I'm going to be honest with you, and here's my only theory while I walk out the door is maybe Amazon and Microsoft have a little party. I don't know. I think I feel like there's going to be some Prime stuff. Like, you know, they want something in Prime that's new hotness, maybe a Fallout. I mean, oh wait, they're already working. Season 2's coming out in December. And
again, this is my speculation. Expect Fallout 3 remake to drop, shadow drop. Right.
No, I have heard differently, sir.
I know what you're gonna say.
I have heard in New Vegas.
Yes, I've heard that also.
And I've heard
they're going to New Vegas, so
tenfold, and it could happen if. And this is where I say if Obsidian is that damn good, because they need a little Obsidian in there for Fallout New Vegas. I'm just saying.
I mean, you're not wrong, brother. I like it. I like what you're putting down. I have heard the same rumor. I haven't talked about it. Maybe it's something we'll cover on Monday. But yeah, there is something game related for Fallout. And it's not a new game because they are many, many years. They've fast-tracked 5, but they are many years away from anything with Fallout 5. So if you just read the tea leaves, look how well Oblivion did.
Hey, let me just tell you. If you know Jones Soda, okay, Jones Soda, some people know what I'm talking about. Sunset Sarsaparilla is now a part of Jones Soda.
Well, there you go. That's very listen, again, read the tea leaves, folks. But we had a super chat pop in here real quick. Let me get to it. It is from Cheese is Nasty. What's going on, brother? Thank you so much for dropping in, and of course, dropping a very generous $5 super chat. He goes on to say, Alien Earth is amazing. Yes, Mrs. Boom and I are watching that this evening. We can't freaking wait. We are sci-fi nuts, especially Aliens versus Predator. I'm so glad that this series exists. I'm so glad that Predator Badlands looks as good as it is. If you've seen the oh my God, and again, I'm a movie buff, folks. I wish I had time to do my own show like Den of Nerds and have just talk about MCU and other stuff. If you missed out on any of the Predator stuff recently, check it out. It's really good. But Fuzzy over here. Let's see. Let me continue. He says, Alien Earth was amazing. Never watched any Alien films before, but may check them out. Okay, so if I may suggest, Alien is amazing. God tier stuff. Aliens is, and watch the director's cut, because there's a lot of added stuff that they took out. It's so good. some of the newer ones, oh god, I don't know. Aliens versus Predator 1 was amazing. Those are my three choices. Aliens versus Predator 2, stupid. Just ridiculous.
Aliens Romulus was pretty good. And then
Romulus was excellent. That was one of the newer ones. Yes, that was the one that they just released. That was excellent. Yes.
And Prometheus isn't bad as well.
I didn't like it. I'm gonna be honest with you, but it's fine. Check it out, dude. You can watch it on Disney Plus if you have if Hulu. But thank you so much for the generosity, brother. Fuzzy Belvedere. Speaking of horror, of course, in Aliens versus Predator, you and the missus have a horror podcast called Fright Night with Ferocious Fee. Friday evening, 6 p.m. Eastern Standard Time. I don't know if you're doing a show today, but if you are, I want people to tune in. I want people to subscribe. Tell everyone where they can do both.
Well, as always, greatly appreciate doing this podcast with you and Crispy. Just love talking about games, but also talking about horror, which there won't be a show tonight, but we did release a interview with Lauren Alina. She's like an up-and-coming scream queen, so definitely check that out. It's posted on Fright Night with Ferocious Fee podcast channel. The link is in the chat, as well as a link to my YouTube. But we're going to be on the road working on something movie related. So hopefully after these rooms are completed, which we should have everything wrapped up for next week, we can start talking about some of the projects that we're working on or a part of and stuff like that. But for anything gaming related, my rants and rambles can be found on social media. Just look up Fuzzy Belvedere. You'll be able to find me. But everybody tackle that backlog. We're getting it, swamped with games, and it's a good thing. And participate in that Battlefield 6 beta this weekend if you have the chance. I think it's a worthwhile go. But also remember, you're going to have to sharpen your skills for Call of Duty later this year as well. But have fun, everybody. Be safe this weekend, and see y'all on Monday for Xbox lunch break special.
Thank you. Appreciate that. Cheese is nasty. Listen, if you're on Twitter, brother, DM me so I can send you a scorecard for all of the Alien films, and it puts everything in order so it makes sense. So if you wanted to actually watch it in order so it makes sense, because Alien Earth actually takes place before Alien. So it's DM me if you can. If not, email me, because you can find the email or the business address at the about part of the YouTube channel, and I'll send it over to you. It breaks it down by year and not by real year, but like the year of when it's happening in outer space, and it breaks it down in the order of actually how it happened. So if you wanted to actually watch it in order, you could. So ladies and gentlemen, that's going to do it for us here. Enjoy your weekend. Like I said, of course, Fuzzy, want to reiterate his point. Battlefield 6, the beta's been since yesterday. They broke more records. People are really enjoying it. I'm not going back. I got as much Battlefield as I need to know. I'm buying it. They got my $100. It's fine. But I actually am going back to Halo. Like I want to start playing Halo Infinite again. I missed it. I'm going to give Call of Duty a bit of a break, even though it's going to be, some withdrawal symptoms, but whatever. I'll try. Shout out to the best mod in the business, Boss Mod Lethal Papa, walking silently and carrying a very big band stick as he does. He says, be safe. Take care, everyone, as you as well, brother. And of course, ladies and gentlemen, that's going to do it for us here. Of course, thank you once again for all the generosity through super chats, through channel memberships, and through donated memberships. Mrs. Boom and I do greatly appreciate it. And of course, we're going to close today's show with something that's incredibly important to me, ladies and gentlemen. Hopefully, one day it'll be important to you. And that's something that my dad taught us when we were kids. And he would say, Craig, treat others how you want to be treated. And also, it doesn't cost anything to be nice. You live by those rules, son. I can guarantee you're going to have an awesome day. So take care, everyone. And we'll see you next week on the newest episode of Breakfast with Boom.